The diner door swung open, and daylight spilled across the worn linoleum like a spotlight. Conversations faltered for a heartbeat as a man stepped inside. Tall, broad-shouldered, veins running like cords across his forearms, the kind of presence that made strangers instinctively move out of his way. Beside him, a small girl clutched a stuffed fox with one ear bent, her bright eyes scanning the room with the same quiet vigilance as her father. His name was Caleb Ward, though most in town only knew him as the quiet man who worked odd jobs and kept to himself. But there was something about the way he carried himself, the way he filled a doorway without trying, the way his gaze swept the room before he sat, that hinted at a past nobody dared ask about. Every Saturday morning, Caleb and his 8-year-old daughter Emma came to this diner at the same time, sliding into the same booth at the back. It was their ritual, their sanctuary. Emma copied her father's habits without realizing it, glancing at the entrance before settling in, as if she too understood that danger could walk through any door. Marcy, the waitress, was already waiting with coffee. "Morning, Caleb," she said, setting the mug down. Emma received her orange juice in the cup with cartoon animals, smiling faintly as she placed her fox on the table. Emma looked up from her placemat. "Daddy, can I get chocolate chip pancakes today?" Caleb's lips curved into a rare smile. "It's Saturday, that's the rule." The diner hummed with the usual morning crowd, truckers, retirees, college kids nursing hangovers. Forks clinked against plates, the griddle hissed, voices blended into background noise. But beneath it all, there was a tension waiting to surface. Before I tell you what happened next, subscribe to the channel and let me know in the comments what time it is where you are watching from. It helps more than you know. The bell above the door chimed again. A young woman in fatigue stepped inside, shoulders tight, eyes tired. Her name tag read Cara Duval. She sat alone at the counter, ordered toast and coffee, and pulled out a paperback she didn't really read. Caleb noticed her, then looked away. Emma leaned close. "Daddy, is she a soldier?" "She is," Caleb said. "Like you used to be." Caleb paused, his mug halfway to his lips. "Different," he said softly. The calm shattered when the door slammed open once more. 4 soldiers strode in, loud from morning training, adrenaline still pumping. At their head was Sergeant Blake Rowan, grinning with the arrogance of someone used to being obeyed. Behind him came Corporal Dean Riker, Private Mason Holt, and Specialist Tessa Cade, the only woman among them. Uneasy but unwilling to break from the group, they spotted Cara almost instantly. Rowan's grin widened. Well, Duval. Didn't know you ate real food." The laughter that followed wasn't friendly. It was sharp, testing, meant to corner. And as the group closed in around Cara, the rest of the diner looked away, pretending not to see. Emma's hand froze around her pencil. Her voice was barely a whisper, but it carried straight to her father. "Daddy, please save her." Caleb's jaw tightened. He had walked away from war years ago, but nothing he had faced in combat struck harder than hearing his daughter's plea. He set his coffee cup down, slow and deliberate, and stood. 4 soldiers laughed at their own cruelty, unaware that the man now walking toward them was about to change everything in 10 seconds. The diner had gone silent, every fork paused mid-air, every conversation cut short. Caleb Ward's boots pressed against the worn linoleum as he closed the distance to the counter. His shoulders rolled forward, arms heavy with muscle, veins standing out like cords beneath his skin. He didn't rush. He didn't posture. He simply moved with the kind of calm that made the air feel heavier. Sergeant Blake Rowan turned, his grin faltering as he realized the man approaching wasn't just another civilian. Caleb stopped 3 feet away, his voice low and steady. "Let her go." Rowan smirked, trying to mask the flicker of unease. "This your boyfriend, Duval?" he said loudly, drawing laughter from Corporal Dean Riker and Private Mason Holt. Specialist Tessa Cade shifted uncomfortably, her eyes darting between Caleb and Cara. Cara Duval shook her head quickly. "I don't know him," she said, her voice tight. Caleb didn't look at her. His eyes stayed locked on Rowan. "She asked you to let go. Do it." Rowan squared his shoulders, puffing himself up. "Why don't you mind your business, old man?" Caleb took 1 step closer, entering Rowan's space with deliberate confidence. "You've got one problem," he said. "Move." The word hung in the air like a line drawn in sand. Rowan's jaw tightened. He released Cara's sleeve, but instead of backing down, He shoved Caleb hard in the chest with both hands. Caleb's body shifted only 6 inches, his feet adjusted automatically, balance perfect, stance casual but unyielding. He didn't raise his hands. He didn't flinch. He simply absorbed the force and stood there, calm eyes fixed on Rowan. The silence in the diner deepened. Kara's breath caught. Emma's small fingers tightened around her stuffed fox. Her wide eyes locked on her father. Rowan's face flushed. His crew was watching, and this civilian had just made him look weak. Anger surged. He cocked his arm back and swung a haymaker punch, his full weight behind it. Caleb wasn't there when the fist arrived. He slipped inside the arc of the swing, redirecting Rowan's arm with his left hand. His right elbow drove into Rowan's solar plexus with surgical precision. Air rushed out of Rowan's lungs, his eyes wide with shock. Before he could recover, Caleb swept his leg and used Rowan's own momentum to drive him face first into the floor. 3 seconds had passed. Riker lunged next, arms outstretched for a tackle. Caleb pivoted, catching his wrist and elbow, twisting with controlled force. Riker's scream tore through the diner as his arm bent in a direction it wasn't meant to. Caleb guided him down, striking his kidney against the counter edge, incapacitating but not crippling. 6 seconds had passed. Holt hesitated, then charged low for a double-leg takedown. Caleb sprawled instantly, stopping the move cold. He controlled Holt's head, drove a knee into his chest, knocking the wind out of him. Holt collapsed, gasping, arms wrapped around his ribs. 9 seconds had passed. Specialist Cade raised her hands, palms out. "I'm good," she said quickly, backing away. Caleb's breathing hadn't changed. His face was calm, his movements precise. He stepped back, leaving Rowan, Riker, and Holt on the floor in varying states of pain. The diner was frozen. Marcy stood in the doorway, hand over her mouth. The trucker had half risen from his seat, coffee forgotten. The older couple sat stiff, forks suspended midair. Kara pressed against the counter, her eyes wide, staring at Caleb like she was trying to solve a puzzle that didn't add up. She had seen soldiers fight. She had seen training exercises, but this wasn't that. This was something else. Something sharper, cleaner, honed in places most people never saw. Caleb turned to her. "You okay?" he asked, voice level as if nothing unusual had happened. Kara swallowed hard. "Who are you?" she whispered. Caleb's expression didn't change. "Nobody," he said. "File a report." He walked back to his booth, sat down across from Emma and picked up his coffee. It was still warm. He took a sip, then looked at his daughter. "You okay, sweetheart?" Emma nodded slowly, clutching her fox. "I knew you would help, Daddy." Caleb adjusted her placemat, moved her juice closer. "Finish eating," he said gently. The bell above the door chimed again. Deputy Clara Hewson stepped inside, her eyes scanning the scene with the quick assessment of someone who had been doing this job for 20 years. She saw the soldiers on the floor, the civilians frozen, and Caleb sitting calmly with his daughter. Kara intercepted her, voice shaking but firm. "Those men assaulted me. He defended me. I want to press charges." The trucker stood. "I saw it. They cornered her. He asked them to stop. They shoved him first." The older couple nodded. "That's exactly what happened," the woman said. Deputy Hewson's eyes narrowed as she turned to Rowan, still gasping for breath. "Your active duty?" Rowan managed a nod. "Sergeant, ma'am. Fort Ashford." Her expression hardened. "Then you should know better. Get out of my town. All of you." The soldiers stumbled out, humiliated, but the story was far from over. By dawn, military vehicles would surround Caleb's house, and an admiral would step forward with a question that could change everything. The night passed quietly in Ashford, but by morning the calm was gone. Gravel crunched beneath heavy tires as military vehicles rolled into the narrow street where Caleb Ward's small house stood. Neighbors peeked through curtains, whispering about the convoy that had arrived without warning. Emma sat at the kitchen table, her stuffed fox tucked under one arm, watching her father pour coffee into a chipped mug. She didn't understand why soldiers were outside, but she felt the tension in the air. Caleb's jaw was tight, his movements deliberate, the same way they had been in the diner. The front door rattled with a knock that carried authority. Caleb opened it to find a man in dress blues, his chest heavy with ribbons, his posture commanding. Admiral Jonathan Pierce stepped forward, flanked by 2 officers. His eyes studied Caleb with the precision of someone who had spent decades reading men. "Mr. Ward," Pierce said, his voice deep and measured. Or should I say Chief Petty Officer Ward? You've been off the grid for 5 years. Yesterday you revealed yourself. Caleb's expression didn't change. I'm just a father, he said. Pierce's gaze flicked to Emma, then back. You neutralized 4 trained soldiers in 10 seconds. That's not something a construction worker does. That's something a SEAL does. And you were one of the best. Emma's small voice broke the silence. Daddy isn't a soldier anymore. Pierce crouched slightly, softening his tone. You're right. He walked away, but sometimes the world doesn't let us stay gone. Caleb's muscles tensed. What do you want? Pierce straightened. There's an operation. Classified. We need someone who can do what you did yesterday, XCOD, with control, precision, and restraint. You're not just muscle, Ward. You're discipline. And discipline is rare. Caleb shook his head. I left that life. My daughter is my mission now. Pierce's jaw tightened. I respect that. But understand this. Those men you put down yesterday, they'll talk. Word will spread. You can't hide anymore. Whether you accept it or not, your past has found you. Emma clutched her fox tighter, her eyes wide. Daddy? She whispered. Caleb placed a hand on her shoulder. It's okay, sweetheart. Pierce stepped closer, lowering his voice. I'm not here to drag you back. I'm here to offer you a choice. Help us one last time, and I'll make sure your daughter never has to look over her shoulder. Refuse, and the questions will keep coming. From the base, from the town, from people who don't care about your peace. Caleb's silence stretched. He had walked away from war, but war had walked back to his door. Finally, he spoke. If I do this, it's on my terms. My daughter stays safe. No one touches her life. Pierce nodded once. Agreed. The Admiral turned to leave, but paused at the door. You saved a soldier yesterday. You reminded everyone what courage looks like. Don't waste that gift. The convoy pulled away, leaving dust in its wake. Caleb closed the door, leaned against it, and exhaled slowly. Emma looked up at him, her voice soft but certain. I knew you'd help her, Daddy. You always do. Caleb crouched, meeting her eyes. I'll always protect you. That's what matters. But deep inside, he knew the Admiral was right. His past wasn't gone. It had simply been waiting. Caleb thought the fight was over, but the Admiral's words echoed in his mind. Soon he would face a choice between the quiet life he built and the warrior he used to be. The convoy had left Ashford's narrow street, but the weight of Admiral Pierce's visit lingered like smoke after a fire. Caleb Ward sat on his porch as the late afternoon sun stretched long shadows across the cracked pavement. His arms rested on his knees, veins standing out against his forearms, the kind of detail that made him look carved from stone. Inside the house, Emma hummed softly while coloring, her stuffed fox tucked under one arm. She was trying to pretend everything was normal, but her eyes kept darting toward the window, searching for the soldiers who had surrounded their home that morning. Caleb's mind was far from calm. He had built this life carefully, piece by piece, like a fragile shelter against the storm of his past. Every Saturday morning at the diner, every quiet evening on the porch, every small ritual with Emma was part of that design. He had promised himself that she would never see the chaos he had once lived in. Yet yesterday, in 10 seconds, that promise had cracked. By midday, the town was buzzing. The diner where the fight had taken place had become the epicenter of gossip. The trucker who had witnessed everything told the story again and again, each retelling sharper, more dramatic. He didn't even break a sweat, the man said, his voice carrying across the counter. 4 soldiers down in seconds, like he'd done it 1,000 times before. The older couple repeated their version to neighbors, emphasizing how Caleb had moved like water, like someone trained beyond anything we'd ever seen. Marcy, the waitress, tried to keep her voice low, but even she admitted to a friend that Caleb wasn't just a construction worker. You don't put down 4 soldiers in 10 seconds unless you've lived a life most of us can't imagine, she said. Some townsfolk admired him, calling him a hero. Others were uneasy, whispering about what it meant to have a man like that living quietly among them. Was he dangerous? Was he hiding something? The speculation spread like wildfire, and Caleb knew there was no way to put it out. He ignored the talk. He sat on the porch watching Emma sketch in her notebook. She drew the diner, the counter, the soldiers, and her father standing tall. When she finished, she held it up proudly. That's you, Daddy. You saved her. Caleb's throat tightened. You're the reason I did, he said softly. But Admiral Pierce's words gnawed at him. You can't hide anymore. As the sun dipped lower, Cara Duval appeared at the edge of the porch. She wore civilian clothes, her uniform folded neatly in her bag. Her eyes carried exhaustion but also gratitude. I wanted to thank you, she said. If you hadn't stepped in, I don't know what would have happened. Caleb nodded. You should file a report, make it official. Her jaw tightened. I already have. But you know how it goes. Complaints vanish. Chains of command bury things. Yesterday you made sure they couldn't bury me. Emma peeked from behind the screen door, clutching her fox. Cara smiled faintly. She's brave. Braver than most adults I know. Caleb's gaze softened. She's the reason I walked away. I promised myself I'd never let her see the things I've seen. Cara hesitated, then said quietly, but yesterday she saw, and she saw you protect someone who needed it. That's not something to regret. Caleb didn't answer. He looked out at the street where the dust from the convoy had long settled. The silence stretched between them, heavy but not uncomfortable. Cara finally stepped down from the porch. Whatever choice you make, Ward, don't forget. You reminded people what courage looks like. Night fell, and the town lights flickered on. Caleb sat alone, replaying the Admiral's words. He had been offered a choice, but it didn't feel like one. His past had already stepped back into his present. Emma came to sit beside him, her small hand resting on his arm. Daddy, are they coming back? She asked. Caleb exhaled slowly. Maybe, but whatever happens, I'll keep you safe. Emma leaned against him, her faith absolute. And in that moment, Caleb realized the truth. No matter how much he wanted to stay hidden, the world had already seen him. Caleb believed silence could protect him, but by the next sunrise, his past would demand more than quiet. It would demand a decision. The dawn broke over Ashford with a pale light. But inside Caleb Ward's home, the weight of the night still lingered. He had barely slept. Every time he closed his eyes, Admiral Pierce's words returned like a drumbeat. You can't hide anymore. Emma stirred awake, her stuffed fox tucked under her chin, and padded into the kitchen where Caleb sat at the table. His massive frame hunched forward, veins visible across his forearms as he clasped his coffee mug. She climbed into the chair beside him, her small legs swinging. Daddy, are they gone? She asked. Caleb nodded slowly. For now. Emma studied him with the piercing honesty only children possess. You're thinking too much, she said. He managed a faint smile. Maybe I am. Outside, the town was already alive with whispers. At the diner, Marcy poured coffee for the regulars while retelling the story of the fight. 4 soldiers, she said, her voice hushed but urgent. He dropped them like it was nothing, calm as stone. I've never seen anything like it. The trucker chimed in, shaking his head. That wasn't just some bar fight. That was training. Real training. Whoever he is, he's not just a construction worker. By mid-morning, Caleb could feel the eyes on him. Neighbors lingered at fences, conversations hushed when he passed. Some looked at him with admiration, others with unease. He had wanted anonymity, but now he was the town's mystery. Cara Duval arrived again, this time in uniform. She stood straighter than before, her voice steadier. The report is filed, she said. But you know how it works. They'll try to bury it. The only reason it might stick is because too many witnesses saw what happened. Caleb leaned against the porch railing, his arms crossed. That's your fight, not mine. Cara's eyes narrowed. It became yours the moment you stood up. You think you can walk away, but yesterday proved otherwise. People like Rowan don't forget humiliation. They'll come back. And when they do, you'll have to choose again. Emma appeared in the doorway, listening quietly. Caleb's gaze softened as he looked at her. My choice is her, he said firmly. Cara hesitated, then lowered her voice. And what happens when choosing her means facing them, or facing something bigger? The Admiral didn't come here for nothing. He knows you're still capable. He knows you're still needed. Caleb's silence stretched. He wanted to deny it, but deep down he knew she was right. The fight at the diner had been instinct, muscle, memory. He hadn't thought. He had simply acted. And in those 10 seconds, the man he had tried to bury had resurfaced. That evening, Caleb walked through town with Emma. The streets glowed under the fading sun, but the stares followed him. An older man tipped his hat respectfully. A young couple whispered as he passed. Emma clutched his hand tighter. Daddy, why is everyone looking at you? Because they saw something yesterday, Caleb said. Something they don't understand. Emma tilted her head. I understand. You helped. Her words struck him harder than any soldier's punch. To her it was simple. He had helped. But to the world it was complicated. Back at the house, Caleb sat on the porch again, the night air cool against his skin. His mind replayed the Admiral's offer. One last mission. One last time. He had walked away from war, but war had walked back to his door. Emma curled beside him, her fox tucked under her chin. Daddy, if they come back, will you stop them again? Caleb wrapped an arm around her, his muscles taut, his voice steady. Always. But inside he knew the truth. Protecting her might mean stepping back into the shadows he had escaped. And if that day came, he would have to decide whether being a father and being a warrior could exist together. The stars blinked overhead, silent witnesses to his turmoil. Caleb closed his eyes, listening to Emma's breathing, and made a silent vow. Whatever choice lay ahead, it would be made for her. Caleb believed he could keep the world at bay, but the Admiral's words echoed louder each day. Soon he would face the decision that would define not only his future, but Emma's as well. The following morning in Ashford carried a strange quiet, as if the town itself was holding its breath. Caleb Ward rose early, his massive frame filling the doorway as he stepped onto the porch. The veins across his forearms stood out in the cool air, his muscles taut beneath the faded jacket he always wore. He scanned the street with the same instinctive vigilance that had guided him in war zones, though now it was a quiet neighborhood with children riding bicycles and neighbors watering gardens. Emma padded out behind him, her stuffed fox tucked under her arm. She was only 8 years old, but her eyes carried a sharpness that mirrored her father's. Daddy, she said softly, are they coming back today? Caleb crouched, resting one heavy hand on her shoulder. Not today, he said, but if they do, I'll be ready. Inside, the coffee pot hissed and the smell filled the small house. Caleb poured himself a mug, sat at the table, and stared at the steam rising. Admiral Pierce's words echoed again. You can't hide anymore. By mid-morning, Cara Duval returned. She wore civilian clothes this time, her uniform folded neatly in her bag. Her expression was firm, but her voice carried gratitude. They're talking about you on base, she said. Rowan and his men are humiliated. Word is spreading fast. Some call you dangerous. Others call you a hero. Either way, you're not invisible anymore. Caleb leaned back, his arms crossed, veins standing out against his skin. I didn't ask for attention, I just did what was right. Cara nodded. That's exactly why people are talking. You didn't fight out of anger, you fought with control. That's rare. And that's why the Admiral came. Emma appeared in the doorway, listening. Cara smiled faintly at her. Your daughter's faith in you is what made yesterday possible. She believed you would help, and you did. Caleb's gaze softened. She's the reason I walked away. I wanted her to grow up without knowing the things I've seen. Cara hesitated, then said quietly, but yesterday she saw, and what she saw wasn't violence. It was courage. Don't regret that. The day stretched on, and whispers in town grew louder. Some neighbors approached Caleb with cautious respect. An older man tipped his hat, saying, You did what none of us had the courage to do. A young mother added, My son serves at the base. I hope he learns to stand like you did. Caleb listened, but he remained silent. He hadn't wanted recognition. He had wanted peace. Yet, peace had been shattered the moment Emma whispered those words in the diner. Daddy, please save her. That evening, Admiral Pierce returned alone. He stood at the gate, his posture rigid, his eyes steady. Caleb stepped out to meet him, arms folded across his chest. You've had time to think, Pierce said. Caleb's jaw tightened. I told you. My daughter is my mission now. Pierce nodded. And that's exactly why I came back. I'm not asking you to abandon her. I'm asking you to protect her by finishing what others can't. One mission, one time. Then you walk away for good with no shadows following you. Emma peeked from the porch, clutching her fox. Caleb's gaze flicked to her, then back to Pierce. If I do this, she stays safe. No one touches her life. Pierce's voice was firm. Agreed. The silence stretched, heavy with decision. Caleb's muscles tensed, his veins standing out as if his body itself resisted the choice. But deep inside, he knew the truth. His past had already found him. Refusing wouldn't erase it. Accepting might finally close it. Finally, Caleb spoke. One mission, then I'm done. Pierce's eyes held respect. That's all I ask. The Admiral turned to leave but paused. Yesterday your daughter reminded you who you are. Don't forget it. When the convoy returned days later, Caleb stood at the gate, Emma watching from the porch. He climbed into the vehicle, his frame filling the doorway, veins taut, muscles coiled. He didn't look back, but he knew Emma's eyes followed him with absolute faith. The mission was swift, precise, and final. Caleb moved with the same control he had shown in the diner, ending what needed to be ended, protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. And when it was over, he returned to Ashford, his promise intact. Emma ran to him, her fox clutched tight. "Daddy, you came back," she said, her voice carrying relief and certainty. Caleb lifted her into his arms, his massive frame softening as he held her close. "Always," he said. The town's whispers faded in the weeks that followed. Caleb was no longer invisible, but he was respected. He had reminded them what courage looked like, and more importantly, he had reminded himself. On the porch, under the fading light, Emma leaned against him, her faith unshaken. Caleb exhaled slowly, knowing the world might never stop testing him, but also knowing he would never stop protecting her. And if you've been listening this far, subscribe to the channel and let me know in the comments what time it is where you're watching from. It helps more than you know.